Welcome to Idlewild Cottage, a quiet place where kindred spirits can linger together over a cup of tea, savoring all things lovely and cozy. My name is Juliana, and I'm delighted to have you. Each episode here at the cottage will center around a theme. That theme will be celebrated in a number of ways through literature, art, nature, and even some favorite movie scenes. We'll cherish the sweet and simple things of life. So make yourself at home, and I'll put the kettle on. Merry Christmas, kindred spirits! I've been so eager to pop back in this month to share this special bonus episode with you. During our Christmassy time together today, we'll revisit some of our all-time favorite stories, from Anne of Green Gables and Little Women to Little House on the Prairie, and even a Charles Dickens gem. Each of these classics draws us near the crackling fire in a meaningful way. We'll peek into the pages of these stories, and some corresponding film adaptations as well, to delight in the atmosphere of an old-fashioned Christmas by the fireside. Let's draw near the fire here at Idlewild Cottage. Imagine the mantel hung with stockings, boughs of holly tucked here and there, garlands of fragrant cedar draped lavishly about the room. I'll pour out steaming cups of my favorite Christmas tea. Appropriately, it's called Joy. It's a Tazo blend with sweet, festive hints of peach. As you sip and savor, we'll turn our attention to Little Women. Louisa May Alcott originally wrote her classic novel in 2 volumes. The first was called Little Women, and the second, Good Wives. The first volume is bookended by the Christmas season. In the opening chapters, we see how the fireside represents generosity and sacrifice. For we are not circled around the March mantle, but rather the hearth of the Hummel family. At Marmee's encouragement, the story unfolds. 6 children are huddled into one bed, for they have no fire. There is nothing to eat over there. My girls, will you give them your breakfast as a Christmas present? Before long, the procession of hooded angels sets out, and we read, "In a few minutes, it really did seem as if kind spirits had been at work there. Hannah made a fire. Mrs. March gave the mother tea and gruel and dressed the little baby as tenderly as if it had been her own. The girls spread the table and set the children round the fire, where they ate and warmed their hands at the comfortable blaze." Alcott reflects, "I think there were not in all the city 4 merrier people than the hungry little girls who gave away their breakfast and contented themselves with bread and milk on Christmas morning." As the year turns and we arrive at another Christmas in the March home, we see how the girls have blossomed in their efforts to become the strong and faithful little women their father is eager to find when returning from the war. Let's pick up this scene in the 1994 movie adaptation. Here, the fireside again speaks of generosity and also family unity. Beth crowns the moment by coming downstairs, though still weak from her illness, to discover the gift of a piano from Mr. Lawrence. Her sweet presence at the candlelit instrument brings both joy and tears as friends and family gather round to sing Deck the Halls, including Aunt March, who surprises us all with her boisterous participation. Then, as the choristers fill the air with "Hark the Herald Angels Sing," Father walks through the front door. After long, weary months of worrying and waiting, the March family is together again. The girls gather round in celebration of Father's safe return, lavishing him with hugs and home comforts before the fire. Let's now travel from Massachusetts to Prince Edward Island, where we find Matthew and Marilla quietly reflecting on their evening at the Christmas concert, in which Anne shone like a star. That night, Marilla and Matthew, who had been out to a concert for the first time in 20 years, sat for a while by the kitchen fire after Anne had gone to bed. Well, now, I guess our Anne did as well as any of them, said Matthew proudly. Yes, she did, admitted Marilla. She's a bright child, Matthew, and she looked real nice, too. I've been kind of opposed to this concert scheme, but I suppose there's no real harm in it after all. Anyhow, I was proud of Anne tonight, although I'm not going to tell her so. Well, now, I was proud of her, and I did tell her so, for she went upstairs, said Matthew. Matthew's pride had also been expressed that Christmas morning in the gift of a dress with puffed sleeves. Let's step into this moment by way of the 1985 movie, where Matthew musters his courage to buy a dress for Anne. Oh, friends, don't we feel for dear Matthew as he enters the store, shyly avoiding his real reason for shopping that day? A garden rake and 20 pounds of brown sugar later, Matthew finally overcomes his embarrassment and whispers to the storekeeper, I need a dress with puffed sleeves for Anne. And oh, what a dress it is! Anne is rapturously happy when she later descends the stairs in the dress with the puffiest sleeves in the world. Marilla rolls her eyes over the extravagance while scooping brown sugar from the large sack at the kitchen table, and the exchange of love and gratitude as Anne races out to the barn to thank Matthew is one that readily brings tears to the eyes of even the Scroogest of Scrooges. You can probably guess where we're headed next. It's time to visit Victorian England, where we find one of the most well-known Christmas stories. Charles Dickens wrote A Christmas Carol in 1843. The fireside themes throughout this work masterfully mirror the development of Ebenezer Scrooge's character. In the opening chapters, we see how a fire, or lack thereof, represents Scrooge's miserly nature, both as it relates to his own comfort and to the comfort of his clerk, Bob Cratchit. The door of Scrooge's counting house was open that he might keep his eye upon his clerk, who, in a dismal little cell beyond, was copying letters. Scrooge had a very small fire, but the clerk's fire was so very much smaller that it looked like one coal. But he couldn't replenish it, for Scrooge kept the coal box in his own room, and so surely as the clerk came in with the shovel, the master predicted that it would be necessary for them to part. Wherefore the clerk put on his white comforter and tried to warm himself at the candle, in which effort, not being a man of a strong imagination, he failed. Well, as you likely know, all of this is about to change. The tale begins to unfold, and we find Scrooge returning home after a day at the office. He put on his dressing gown and slippers and sat down before the fire to take his gruel. It was a very low fire indeed, nothing on such a bitter night. He was obliged to sit close to it and brood over it before he could extract the least sensation of warmth. Into this gloomy scene, the ghost of Scrooge's deceased partner, Jacob Marley, suddenly appears. Marley warns Scrooge to heed closely the warnings of the 3 spirits who will visit him that night. Later, when Scrooge is visited by the 2nd spirit, the ghost of Christmas Present, we see the transformation that is gradually taking place throughout the story. Here, the fire speaks to the abundance that characterizes Christmas Day. Scrooge's room had undergone a surprising transformation. The walls and ceiling were so hung with living green that it looked a perfect grove, from every part of which bright gleaming berries glistened. The crisp leaves of holly, mistletoe, and ivy reflected back the light, and a mighty blaze went roaring up the chimney. By the end of the story, we are heartened by the warmth that now characterizes Ebenezer Scrooge. We circle around to a familiar scene and find Scrooge and his clerk once again at the office. "A Merry Christmas, Bob," said Scrooge with an earnestness that could not be mistaken. "A merrier Christmas, Bob, my good fellow, than I have given you for many a year. I'll raise your salary and endeavor to assist your struggling family. Make up the fires and buy another coal scuttle before you dot another I, Bob Cratchit. Now, you may smile over this, but our family's favorite adaptation of the story happens to be The Muppet Christmas Carol. Would you believe that a frog could bring tears to your eyes, or that Gonzo would make such a great Charles Dickens? Not only that, but The Muppet Christmas Carol is also a musical. Aside from the fact that mice sing and horses dance, it really feels as though we are swept into Victorian England as the players twirl through the streets to the lively chorus. It's in the singing of the street corner choir. It's going home and getting warm by the fire. It's true wherever you find love, it feels like Christmas. Well, it certainly feels like Christmas when we step into the pages of Tasha Tudor's warm holiday paintings. So, as I go around filling up your teacups again, let's turn our attention to the enchanted picture frame here at Idlewild Cottage. Tasha Tudor's Christmas book, Take Joy, is filled with images that irresistibly draw us into the cozy warmth of the season. I encourage you to look up the paintings in this sweet book and to pay special attention to how Tudor uses light, whether it be a blazing fire, the twinkle of tree lights, or the flicker of a candle flame to represent the joys of Christmas. Her depictions of children in nightgowns hanging stockings by the fire will help set the stage for our scene from Little House on the Prairie. In Chapter 19, Mr. Edwards has braved winter storms to surprise the Ingalls family with special gifts. You can imagine the girls' excitement when Ma finally gives permission for them to peek into their stockings. Something was shining bright in the top of Laura's stocking. She squealed and jumped out of bed. So did Mary, but Laura beat her to the fireplace. And the shining thing was a glittering new tin cup. Mary had one exactly like it. These new tin cups were their very own. Now they each had a cup to drink out of. Laura jumped up and down and shouted and laughed, but Mary stood still and looked with shining eyes at her own tin cup. I wonder if we are more inclined to be like Laura or Mary as we experience the beauty of this Christmas season. Whether we gleefully laugh and shout or quietly savor the moments with silent wonder, may we hold close to our hearts this image from Psalm 18. Lord, you keep my lamp burning. My God turns my darkness into light. And how miraculously he did this for all of mankind so long ago in sending his light into the darkness, a light in the humble, gentle form of the baby in a manger. Have a blessed Christmas, kindred spirits. I'll look forward to visiting with you again in just a few weeks with some cozy winter content. As always, thank you for joining me today. Please come again soon to Idlewild Cottage.